Hello there. Today we're back at Tower Bridge. Tower Bridge is one of those things that if you're a Londoner and you're a sketcher, you've got to do it, and you've got to do it multiple times because it's tricky. And this is a proper long session. This is 4 hours, which is about as long as I'll ever get because it's exhausting. And it's a large panel. This is A2. And I thought I'd show it to you in a different way than I normally would. Normally I kind of give you highlights just to make it interesting, I guess. Whereas I thought I'd do it in this kind of time-lapse format, I think you would call it. It's something I've been asked to do by various people. I guess the sense of process is interesting for people. And my process is quite unusual, I suppose. And so if I'm skipping around, sometimes people might not fully understand the process I'm going through. So you've seen me start with a piece of brown paper. This is actually a referenced piece of brown in the sense that the original Tower Bridge was painted brown. The colour you see currently is light blue. Existed only from 1977 for the Queen's Jubilee. Before then it was a colour called Glorious Chocolate. And I chose this brown paper, as I say, an A2 size, specifically as a reference to that Glorious Chocolate that it was previously painted. You'll see that I've started with acrylic. I've gone in with a sponge first, which is an extremely, I think, in a way, an extremely liberating start, but it looks very unusual when you do it because it's a way of finding kind of where things sit on the paper in a way that's obviously designed to be messy. And by being messy, you just immediately relax into the process. Imagine drawing something like this with a fine liner, and you think, well, what's the first line I'm going to draw? Where do you literally start? Whereas when you're going to be drawing, he said, in inverted commas, with a sponge, with literally a kitchen sponge, then, it's kind of all bets are off. You can just laugh your way through that process. And it's a really relaxed way of finding things like the forms, the main forms. You'll also notice that I've started with this idea of the two towers being different from each other in a colour sense. So the nearest tower is warmer and the further tower is cooler, or blue and kind of orangey red, literally. So that's a very obvious sense of progression in the atmospheric sense, where the further a thing is, the more it kind of disappears into a sort of blue haze, which can be just a very interesting way of starting a drawing. It gets you, again, that kind of, if you have a couple of tricks up your sleeve that just says, I'm going to do it in this way to begin with, you get the process going very fast, and you don't really have to think too much about that stuff. You've already pre-decided certain things about where colours are going to be and how you're going to apply them. And that does give you a certain, as I say, a certain liberation. You stop worrying about it. One of the things about drawing and painting plein air like this is, in other words, out on the street with a billion tourists walking past you and chatting to you about what you're doing, you're worried of looking foolish. You're worried of doing a painting and somebody coming over, as they often do, and sort of saying, how long have you been painting this for? Or is this finished yet? Or something that implies impatience or at least an unknowingness of your process, or indeed any artistic process. So you kind of get that sense of needing to feel confident that there's something on that board, on that paper, that people are going to be going, okay, yeah, fair enough. If you're in a position like this, literally I'm at the bottom of some steps. So every person in the world is walking past me. And although I have a very wide-brimmed hat, that's my top tip, wear a big hat, because if they can't see your eyes, they feel less inclined to ask you questions. That sounds very manipulative, doesn't it? But I only have one earphone in, so I can hear people, because otherwise it seems a bit rude, I guess, just to completely zone out. And know your process in advance. So I've taken my colours here in the sort of full awareness of what I'm going to paint, the order in which I'm going to paint it. Now, the end product of this, it's fine. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a painting of Tower Bridge. It's in itself, it's quite a thing, But it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I did lose the painting a bit. I often say that. I think you probably get tired of me saying it. But I do, again, feel as if Tower Bridge is a thing you can kind of paint 1,000 times and always feel as if there's something more to find in it. That's probably healthy, I guess. I never feel as if I've quite got it. I don't mean in proportion terms, although proportionately and in perspective terms I do mess this drawing up a tiny bit. For those of you with a good eye for perspective, you'll notice I've already made some mistakes on the right hand tower as far as alignment on the vanishing points. Not that I'm particularly bothered about stuff like that, but it starts off not bothering you, but after you've been looking at it for a couple of hours, you start thinking, yeah, I wish I'd corrected that earlier one. But going back to my point, these kinds of buildings have such personality and recognition that you can paint them in all different kinds of ways and they are instantly recognizable. And so you can kind of push boundaries a bit, push styles, push color in the sense of this one. And in that you're discovering something about it, you're saying something about it, you're bringing something out that isn't necessarily there when you just take a photograph. Well, it definitely isn't there when you take a photograph. A photograph is just a recording of a view, whereas this kind of drawing or painting is interpretation of a view. So there's as much me in this as there is the building itself, and therefore there's a connection between you, and in that connection there's a conversation, and in that conversation you're saying things to each other, and by saying things there's an opinion and a character and a personality that can be expressed and explored. So when you get to the end of the conversation, you ever have that thing where you have a big chat and you go away and next day you think, oh my God, I should have said this. I suddenly have the perfect response to something that somebody said, but I didn't say it at the time because I wasn't, quick enough. I wasn't bright enough. That's what painting like a building like this can feel like. The next day you suddenly think, oh my God, I should have used this color or this technique or this attitude in the way I recorded it in paint. And that's, I think, a symbol of something complex, but also iconic, because it's complex, yes, but not in a way that you can get away with too much error. People do know what Tower Bridge looks like, by which I mean they know it in their bones. It's on every tourist postcard. It's in every movie or film you see. It always starts, if it's in London, there'll be a view of the Thames and it will be Tower Bridge, because it's a way of locating where you are that everybody in the world can go, yep, I understand where I am. So there's something so famous, I guess, about it. It would be like drawing or painting a famous face. And if you don't get, the eyebrows quite right, people know it instinctively. They can kind of feel that something's wrong. And I feel that in Tower Bridge. It has that recognizable silhouette. Now, back to process, before I forget myself. So, we've started with acrylic. Now, using acrylic to create what's called an underpainting is a really smart move. It's a good idea for everyone to do, if you're going to move on to oil, I should say. So, if oils are tricky in that this painting, for example, probably takes about 3 weeks to dry. That's fast. It's drying in only 3 weeks because it's painted onto paper, basically. So it's a substrate that allows it to dry faster than it normally would. If you painted this onto a canvas or a board, it could be many, many weeks, maybe even months before it fully dried. So if you could imagine applying something which is like a colored cream and wanting to apply cream upon cream, as it were, it can become incredibly messy really fast. Oils are magnificent, but they can run away with you. They can kind of get messy and get you messy and get the painting messy and just be a disaster unless you're super sort of controlled. And the easy way to be controlled is to bring them in at the end, or in my case, bring them in kind of 20% through, but carefully. So once you've got the majority color down of the acrylic dries really fast, especially if you water it down a bit. So all of the underpainting here is completely dry, and now I'm going in with the oil paints. They're able to kind of sit on top of that color and really resonate. So you'll see when I'm putting in various colors how it reacts to the color behind it, and 99% of people looking at the finished piece have no awareness where the oil is and where the acrylic is. Now, there are highly skilled artists who could paint everything in oil from the first brush mark to the last brush mark, and that's not me. I don't have that level of skill. For me, it's technique that will get me through. It's tricks, if you like. So the trick of the acrylic underpainting, kind of with a thin wash that dries really fast, is something that I find works for me, certainly. And if you've never tried it and you're into this kind of thing, why not try it? Because this is a technique I sometimes use, but not always. I will swap it out. I don't know, the next time you see me doing a drawing, I'll be doing something in a completely different way. The whole point of painting and drawing is to experiment. It's to enjoy yourself. And I feel as if you get trapped into one method, then, well, that's not really enjoyable. I think there's enjoyment in play, in trying different things. So if you've never played with an underpainting, have a go. Even if you end up using, as I did here, acrylic pens on top first. So I think unusually I've got an acrylic underpainting, I'm then using acrylic pens, and then oil paint over the top. Now the reason for the acrylic pen is that I'm a sketcher. I mean, I'm an urban sketcher at heart, not a painter, not an artist. So I can record the lines of this building, the edges of this building with a pen in a confident way. So when I'm looking at all the fiddly detail on these two towers, then if I've got a pen in my hand, that's immediately, I don't know, I have control over that. I am more relaxed about that. The pen is precise and the pen gives me a knowable mark. So I can sort of shorthand it. If you were to look closely at some of the, inverted commas, detail in this painting, you'll see there isn't really any. It's very sloppy in a good way, because I know how far I can push that sort of look of being detailed without really, showing the detail. It's something that reads in the eye of the viewer more than it's actually in the painting itself. That's the painterly technique. Painterly means that you're not just doing an architectural rendering. It's not just literally the details you see. It's sort of memory of them or representation of them in a way that makes people feel that it's an artistic interpretation. There's something arty about it, rather than it, as I say, just be a pure record. Now, another thing worth talking about, if you were to try something like this yourself, is the easel question, because 99% of all people who are going to do any form of painting will carry an easel with them. So literally a tripod on which they can vertically position their paper or their board. And I don't like to carry an easel around with me. I'm using an A2 portfolio, and I fix a couple of legs to the back of it. You can see the bracket at the top there with the two little wing nuts on it, and I rest the front edge of the portfolio in my lap, and I'm sitting on a little low stool, and that forms a sort of stable shape. So that for me is a comfortable position. But one big problem is that the angle, which is good for drawing, I mean, this is the ideal position for drawing. When you're painting, especially again with oils, which will not be dry for many days to come, is that your hand does tend to rest on the surface. And that's always been my problem. I always get paint on my hands. So what you'll sometimes see me do is extend my little finger, what some people call the pinky finger, and brace it against the surface as if I'm doing a pool shot or a snooker shot, that kind of sense of bridging your hand up, because I'm desperately trying to not rest my hand straight down on that surface and smudge paint, basically. But even so, I still smudge paint. I still get myself all messy, and that messes up the drawing as well. So I guess this is a good compromise, because it's really my sketching style. It's about how I draw. I draw at this angle, so I paint at the same angle I draw at, because for me, painting and drawing are basically the same thing with a slightly different tool in your hand. But as I say, virtually every other person I've ever met will use an easel, which is a vertical position, which I guess is easier in the sense that you don't smear your own work. So have a little think about what angle you might prefer for this kind of this kind of large scale drawing, bearing in mind that this A2 size is about 16 inches by 24, something like that, 17 by 24. And therefore, it's, this is on a small piece of paper. Although, to be honest, I almost wish I could go bigger. I guess it's worth going back to that point about size again, because the majority of people would actually use a smaller surface, a smaller panel or paper in which to create a drawing like this. And for me, the larger, the easier, because you don't have to be so precise. I don't have to bring tiny little itty-bitty paintbrushes and make little tiny itty-bitty marks. I can be sort of gestural with my mark making, and that creates a more relaxed sort of view, at least in me. I enjoy it more, and other people seem to enjoy it, that sense of the artisticness of it. But it's not really anything more than saying the bigger the paper, the more you can move your hand, the more relaxed you are in doing that. And as an urban sketcher, I've drawn small drawings with fine line pens way back in the day, and I feel as if that's just, at some point you want to move on from that. I don't want to have those little tiny sketchbooks anymore. They feel narrow and restrictive, whereas this large piece of paper feels free and expressive. Okay, let's talk about timing. This took me 4 hours, just over 4 hours, 4.5-ish hours. And that brings a certain problem which most people don't regularly face. And that's the damn sun moves. And in the sun moving, it's not just about shadows and, how bright the scene is. It literally changes the way the building looks, or the subject looks. It changes its character because it warms one side and cools the other, and then it moves around. And you can end up chasing the light. And I'm doing that a little bit here, where I've looked at the tower 2 hours ago, and what I represented felt appropriate at that moment. And then I've suddenly realized, it's much brighter and warmer and more kind of baked than I thought it was. I'm kind of forgetting the sun has moved and is literally now blasting on one surface where it was previously on a different surface. And so you can end up kind of chasing around. Now that is, again, the negative, he said in inverted commas, of painting plein air, painting out and about like this. But let me not confuse you. It is a billion times better than painting sitting in your studio from a photograph, because the reality of that sun motion is the reality of that building. It's the reality of that moment. It's truth. And you're not representing a photograph. You're representing something that's kind of living in front of you and is changing, literally changing how it looks. And there's something very exciting about that, and very real, very truthful, and very exciting. So heavily recommended. Give it a go. Even if you maybe start by, sitting in your front garden and doing your own house or something, doing your own street, doing somewhere where or you want to go down to something kind of big and famous in your place. Something that everybody walking past will say, well done you for trying on that one, because that's a big boy to do. Now, it's often the case that if you're doing a drawing of any length of time, the last 20% of that time, you could have stopped already. And I could have stopped half an hour ago in this. I had a meeting. I was with the London Plein Air Painters Society. We were at St Catherine's Dock. So we had agreed that we'd start at a certain time and finish at a certain time, so you can all meet up and have a chat about how it's gone. So I decided to kind of carry on fiddling for the joy of fiddling. A little touch here, a little touch there, just to sharpen up some edges. And I think we're done. So here's the final piece, and the Tower Bridge itself, looking all resplendent in a bright blue day. Weather was very kind. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed this slightly different format. If you have, let me know in the comments. And if you haven't, let me know in the comments. And I shall see you next time. Get out there and paint something iconic and have fun with it.